I'm Rebecca, 34, and last Christmas, my own mother told me not to come home. We'll be more comfortable without you there, she said, her voice cold as December frost. 20 years of family traditions erased with one phone call, all because I wouldn't conform to their image of the perfect daughter. The rejection cut deeper than any winter chill, but what they never expected was how I'd respond when the truth finally surfaced. If you're watching this from somewhere you feel misunderstood, hit that like button and subscribe. Trust me, family heartbreak isn't the end of your story. Growing up in suburban Connecticut, our family Christmas celebrations were straight out of a Hallmark movie. Mom would spend weeks decorating our colonial home with twinkling lights, handmade wreaths, and the collection of ornaments we'd gathered through generations. Dad would string up the outdoor lights, complaining good-naturedly about the cold while secretly enjoying every minute. My brother Michael and I would help bake cookies using recipes passed down from our grandmother, the kitchen filled with laughter and the scent of cinnamon. Christmas Eve always followed the same cherished routine: church service at 6, followed by a formal dinner where Mom would use her treasured silver and crystal. We'd each open one gift before bed, then wake up early for stockings and presents in our matching pajamas. The afternoon brought extended family for a buffet lunch that lasted into evening, with cousins playing board games while adults shared stories over mulled wine. My mother Catherine ruled these gatherings with precision and pride. A former beauty queen with a perfect smile that rarely reached her eyes, she measured success by appearances. Dad, a quiet accountant who avoided conflict, typically went along with whatever Mom wanted. Michael, 2 years younger than me, was the golden child who could do no wrong. He married Vanessa right out of college, a woman who shared my mother's values and quickly became her ally. I loved my family deeply despite our differences. While they remained in our hometown, I moved to Boston after college and built a career as a marketing executive for a tech company. My success should have made them proud, but Catherine's approval always seemed just out of reach. "When are you going to settle down and give us grandchildren?" she'd ask during our Sunday phone calls, dismissing my professional accomplishments with a sigh. Things grew more strained when I started dating Ethan 3 years ago. He was brilliant, kind, and ambitious, a graphic designer with tattoos and a motorcycle. The first time I brought him home, my mother's smile froze on her face. "He seems interesting," she said afterward, in that special tone that conveyed complete disapproval. Over the next 2 years, Ethan tried everything to win them over. He brought thoughtful gifts, asked my father about his coin collection, even offered to help Michael with his business website. Nothing worked. Every family gathering became an exercise in subtle criticism and thinly veiled comments. "I don't understand why you need all those tattoos," my mother would say directly to Ethan. Rebecca was always such a proper little girl. Despite the tension, I insisted we keep trying. "They'll come around," I promised Ethan. "They just need time." Last spring, Ethan and I broke up. The constant family pressure had created fractures in our relationship that eventually became unbridgeable. I mourn not just the loss of our love, but the unfairness of it all. Yet perversely, I expected my family to welcome me back fully now that the problematic boyfriend was gone. Instead, the criticism only shifted. My mother began commenting on my appearance. My hair was too short, my clothes too casual, my makeup either too much or not enough. Michael and Vanessa would exchange knowing glances when I mentioned my work friends or weekend activities. As November arrived and Christmas plans began forming in our family group chat, I noticed I wasn't being included in some of the discussions. When I asked about the gift exchange details, responses were delayed and vague. Still, I booked my flight home and bought presents, including a special ornament I'd found that reminded me of our childhood tree. The first warning came when I texted about my arrival time, asking who could pick me up from the airport. "Actually," Michael replied, "Mom wanted me to talk to you about Christmas this year." My stomach tightened as I waited for the call that would change everything. The phone rang on a Tuesday evening while I was wrapping presents in my apartment. Christmas music played softly in the background as I balanced the phone between my ear and shoulder. "Hi, Mom, what's up?" "I was just wrapping your gift," I said cheerfully. There was a pause before her voice came through, unusually formal and distant. "Rebecca, I need to discuss Christmas arrangements with you." Something in her tone made me set down the scissors. "Okay, what about them?" "My flight gets in on the 23rd at 4. "That's what I wanted to talk about." She cleared her throat. "We think it might be better if you didn't come home this year." The words didn't register at first. I thought I'd misheard her. "What do you mean? Not come home for Christmas?" "The family has been discussing it, and we feel it would be more comfortable for everyone if you celebrated elsewhere this year." Her voice was mechanical, as if reading from a script. "More comfortable?" "Mom, what are you talking about?" My voice rose as panic set in. "You know how these gatherings are, Rebecca. Aunt Judith and Uncle Paul are bringing their new neighbors. Michael's in-laws are coming. We need to present a certain image. And I don't fit that image?" I whispered, the half-wrapped present falling from my lap. "You've changed so much since you moved to Boston. Your lifestyle choices, your appearance, it just creates tension. Michael's starting his new business, and Vanessa's parents are very traditional." Tears burned my eyes. "So you're banning me from Christmas because of how I look?" "Don't be dramatic, Rebecca. It's just 1 year. Take some time to think about your priorities. Maybe next year will be different." I hung up without saying goodbye, my hands shaking so badly, I dropped the phone. The Christmas music still playing in the background now felt like mockery. I turned it off and sat in silence, trying to process what had just happened. 10 minutes later, my phone buzzed with a text from Michael. "Mom told me she talked to you. It's for the best, sis." I called him immediately. "How could you let her do this?" "It's Christmas, Michael." "Look, it's complicated," he sighed. "Vanessa's parents are helping me with startup funding for the business. They're very conservative. The last thing I need is you showing up with your blue hair and political opinions making everyone uncomfortable." "I don't even have blue hair anymore," I protested. "And since when do we hide family members because they might have different viewpoints?" Michael laughed, the sound cutting through me like glass. "Come on, Rebecca. We'll just pretend we don't know you for one holiday. It's not the end of the world." "Would you say that if it was Vanessa being excluded? Or is it just me who's disposable?" I asked, my voice breaking. "Don't make this about you. It's one Christmas. Get over it." He hung up. Over the next few days, I reached out to other family members, hoping someone would stand up for me. My cousin Lisa expressed sympathy, but said she couldn't go against Aunt Catherine. My father sent a text saying he was sorry about the situation, but offered no help. Even my grandmother, who I'd always been close with, suggested I should try harder to fit in with the family values. I canceled my flight and watched the refund process with numb detachment. The collection of carefully wrapped presents sat in the corner of my living room, suddenly meaningless. I couldn't bring myself to return them or give them away, so they remained there like artifacts from a life that no longer existed. As Christmas approached, social media became a minefield. Photos of family gatherings, Christmas markets, and holiday parties filled my feed. I muted my family members, but couldn't escape the constant reminders of joy I wouldn't be part of. On December evenings, I'd walk through my neighborhood looking at decorated houses, remembering how Dad and I used to drive around town raiding Christmas lights. One night, I found myself standing outside a church during their Christmas choir practice, listening to Silent Night drift through the stained glass windows, tears freezing on my cheeks. Back in my apartment, I half-heartedly put up a small artificial tree. The ornaments I'd collected over the years felt like fragments of a shattered history. Each one held memories. The silver star my father gave me when I graduated high school, the handmade angel my grandmother helped me make, the glass ball with family, inscribed in gold letters that Mom had given each of us children. I placed that one back in its box. The word family had lost its meaning. The Sunday before Christmas, scrolling through Instagram despite my better judgment, I saw photos from my family's annual Christmas cookie baking day. Michael's wife Vanessa was wearing my grandmother's apron, standing where I should have been. My mother beamed beside her, captioning the photo, making memories with my beautiful daughter. I turned off my phone, crawled into bed, and allowed myself to truly break down. The pain was physical, a hollow ache beneath my ribs that made it hard to breathe. All night, I cycled through grief, anger, and desperate bargaining. Maybe if I dyed my hair back to brown, wore the clothes my mother approved of, pretended to be someone I wasn't, they would want me again. By morning, empty and exhausted, I sat alone at my kitchen table, a cup of cold coffee between my hands, watching the snow fall outside and wondering how a family that had once been my entire world could now feel like strangers. 3 days before Christmas, I was still in pajamas at noon, surrounded by takeout containers and unwatched holiday movies. My phone rang, displaying my friend Jennifer's name. I almost didn't answer, but something pushed me to accept the call. "I'm outside your building with coffee and bagels," Jennifer announced. "Buzz me up or I'll start singing carols until someone lets me in." When I opened the door, Jennifer took one look at me and set down the food. Without a word, she pulled me into a hug. I hadn't realized how desperately I needed human contact until that moment. "You look like hell," she said bluntly, moving into my apartment and opening curtains. "And it smells like sadness in here." Is that what sadness smells like? Day-old Chinese food and unwashed hair? I attempted a joke. Jennifer wasn't having it. "I've been texting you for days. What's going on?" The whole story poured out of me. The call from my mother, Michael's betrayal, the family closing ranks. Jennifer listened without interrupting, her expression shifting from shock to outrage. "Let me get this straight," she said when I finished. "They've banished you from Christmas because you don't fit their Norman Rockwell fantasy? That's not love, Rebecca. That's control." "They're still my family," I said weakly. "No, they're people who share your DNA. There's a difference." Jennifer grabbed my hands. "The Rebecca I know is strong, brilliant, and authentic. Where's that woman? Hiding under blankets and feeling sorry for herself. Well, tell her to get up. We're not letting her family steal Christmas from you." Jennifer's words were like a splash of cold water. For 2 weeks, I'd been viewing myself through my family's critical lens as deficient, embarrassing, not good enough. I'd forgotten who I actually was. While Jennifer cleaned up my living room, I showered. The hot water seemed to wash away more than just days of neglect. It cleared some of the fog from my mind. Looking in the steamy mirror, I studied my reflection. My naturally auburn hair had grown out from its last cut, curling around my face. My eyes, though puffy from crying, were still the same green that had been passed down through generations of my family. I was still me, whether my family approved or not. Later, over coffee, Jennifer showed me photos from previous Christmases we'd spent together. There I was laughing at office parties, volunteering at the homeless shelter, building gingerbread houses with her nieces and nephews. "You've created beautiful holidays without them before," she pointed out. "And you will again." That night, after Jennifer left, I pulled out journals from the past few years and read entries about family visits. A pattern emerged that I'd never fully acknowledged. My anticipatory excitement before each trip home, followed by days of trying to make myself smaller, quieter, less authentic to avoid criticism, and the inevitable depression that followed each visit when I failed to meet impossible standards. "No more," I whispered to my empty apartment. The next morning, I woke with purpose. I deep-cleaned my apartment, threw out the takeout containers, and put on real clothes. I played Christmas music loudly while reorganizing my little tree, this time leaving the family ornament in its box and adding new decorations I'd bought but been too sad to use, tiny replicas of Boston landmarks that represented my chosen home. At lunch, I made a list of things that brought me joy during the holidays: the lights at the public garden, hot chocolate from the cafe on the corner, the Christmas Eve concert in the park. I'd missed these traditions while wallowing in rejection. That afternoon, my phone chimed with a text from Carlos, a colleague who had become a friend over the past year. "Annual Christmas Eve potluck still happening at my place. You're welcome to join if you're in town." I declined weeks earlier, planning to be in Connecticut. Now I stared at the message, considering. The thought of being around people celebrating made my stomach clench with anxiety, but staying alone suddenly seemed like surrendering to my family's judgment. "What time?" I texted back. "And what can I bring?" Carlos's reply came immediately, 7. "Just bring yourself." Unless you want to make those amazing brownies from the office party. I smiled for what felt like the first time in weeks. The brownies were my grandmother's recipe, one of the few things from home I'd truly made my own. The next day, I went shopping, not just for potluck ingredients, but for a new outfit. Not something my mother would approve of, nor something chosen in defiance. Just something that made me feel like myself. I found a green sweater that matched my eyes and a pair of silver earrings shaped like stars. In the dressing room, trying them on, I made a decision. I wouldn't spend Christmas mourning the loss of family traditions that had become performances of perfection rather than expressions of love. Instead, I would create new traditions based on authenticity and acceptance. That evening, while baking brownies for Carlos's party, I realized something fundamental had shifted inside me. The pain hadn't disappeared, but alongside it grew something new, a quiet determination to live on my own terms. My family's rejection was their loss, not evidence of my unworthiness. For the first time since my mother's call, I felt a small flame of hope rekindling. Christmas would be different this year, but different didn't have to mean destroyed. Perhaps it could even mean something better, something real. As I boxed up the brownies, my phone buzzed with a text from a number I didn't recognize. "Hi, Rebecca. This is Thomas, a friend of Michael's. I'm in Boston for work tomorrow, and he mentioned you live here. Would you be free for coffee? I'd love to catch up." I frowned at the message. Michael and I hadn't spoken since our argument. Why would he suddenly be sending friends my way? Curiosity won over caution, and I agreed to meet Thomas the following morning at a cafe near my apartment. That night, I fell asleep with Christmas lights twinkling in my window and an unexpected sense of anticipation for what tomorrow might bring. Christmas Eve morning brought heavy snow that transformed Boston into a winter wonderland. The cafe where I'd agreed to meet Thomas was nearly empty, most people already settled in for holiday celebrations. I arrived early, claiming a corner table with a view of the snow-covered street. I recognized Thomas immediately when he walked in, though we'd only met briefly at Michael's wedding 3 years earlier. Tall with kind eyes and a quick smile, he brushed snow from his coat and scanned the cafe until he spotted me. "Rebecca, thanks for meeting me," he said, extending his hand. "I wasn't sure you'd remember me. From Michael's wedding, right? You gave the best man speech." I gestured for him to sit. Guilty as charged. He ordered coffee and settled across from me. "I'm surprised Michael didn't tell you I was coming to Boston." I stirred my latte, choosing my words carefully. "Michael and I haven't been in touch lately." Thomas looked confused. "That's odd. When I told him I had meetings here, he said I should definitely look you up, that you know all the best places in the city." This didn't align with my recent experience with my brother. "When did you talk to him about this?" "Last weekend at their Christmas cookie thing. I stopped by since I was in town." Thomas pulled out his phone. "Actually, he's the one who gave me your number." The realization that my brother had been at our traditional family cookie day without me, while apparently speaking positively about me to his friends, left me momentarily speechless. Thomas didn't seem to notice my discomfort as he scrolled through his phone. "How come you weren't there? Your mom makes those amazing gingerbread cookies." "I couldn't make it this year," I said, the understatement of the century burning in my throat. "Well, you were missed. Your mom kept saying how sad it was you couldn't join them." I nearly choked on my coffee. "She said that?" "Yeah, something about work commitments keeping you in Boston? Tough break during the holidays." My mind reeled. My family hadn't just excluded me. They created a complete fiction about my absence. "Are you heading home today for the main event?" Thomas asked. "No, I'm staying in Boston this year," I managed. "Work, you know." "That's dedication. Michael mentioned you're some kind of marketing genius now." Michael had never once acknowledged my career success. What game was my family playing? Thomas continued scrolling through his phone. "I took some photos at their place last weekend. The decorations were incredible as always." He turned his screen toward me, showing images of my childhood home transformed into a Christmas showcase. My mother's perfectly decorated tree. The handmade stockings hung precisely on the mantel. My brother and Vanessa in coordinating sweaters. Your family really goes all out, Thomas said admiringly. Oh, here's everyone together. The next photo showed my parents, Michael, Vanessa, and several extended family members posed on the staircase. My grandmother seated in front, my cousins arranged by height, aunts and uncles beaming in their holiday best. Everyone present except me. You should have seen your grandmother telling stories about past Christmases, Thomas laughed. She had us all in stitches talking about the time you and Michael accidentally broke the star for the tree and tried to fix it with peanut butter. My eyes burned. That memory was real. I was 11, Michael 9. Both of us terrified of ruining Christmas until Dad helped us make a new star from cardboard and aluminum foil. It became a family joke, but now they were sharing it while pretending my absence was normal. Thomas swiped to another photo, and suddenly I was looking at my own face, or rather, a framed family portrait from years ago hanging on my parents' wall. I looked younger, my hair longer, wearing a dress my mother had chosen. Thomas paused, looking between me and the photo. His expression shifted as recognition dawned. Wait, you look different now. Your hair. He trailed off, studying me more carefully. I touched my shorter hair self-consciously. I cut it last year. Thomas stared at me with growing confusion. Rebecca, why did your family say you couldn't come home because of work when you're clearly not at work right now? The question hung between us. I could have maintained the fiction, protected my family's lies. Instead, something in me snapped. Because they didn't want me there, I said quietly. My mother called to uninvite me from Christmas. Said I didn't fit the image they wanted to present. Thomas's expression transformed from confusion to shock. What? That can't be right. My mother specifically said not to come. Michael told me they would pretend they don't know me for the holiday. Thomas set down his phone. But that makes no sense. They talk about you all the time. What do they say exactly? I asked, my voice steady despite my racing heart. Well, your mom shows everyone your photos from college, talks about your job in the big city. Michael brags about his successful sister. Thomas frowned. Though come to think of it, they never mentioned visiting you or you coming home recently. A cold realization washed over me. They're using an old version of me to maintain appearances while rejecting who I actually am. Thomas looked uncomfortable now. I don't know what to say. At the cookie thing, your mom definitely said you were too busy with work to make it home, that you'd chosen career over family this year. She seemed sad about it. She lied, I said simply. They all did. The truth hung between us like frost. Thomas, to his credit, didn't dismiss my words or rush to my family's defense. I'm sorry, he said finally. That's really messed up. We sat in silence for a moment, snow falling steadily outside. What are you doing for Christmas then? Thomas asked. I'm going to a friend's potluck tonight. Just trying to make the best of things. Thomas nodded slowly. Would you mind if I came too? My flight home got canceled due to the snow, and my hotel room isn't exactly festive. The request surprised me, but something about Thomas's honest reaction to my family's deception made me trust him. Sure, if you don't mind a bunch of marketing people and their friends eating too much and playing ridiculous games. Sounds better than room service and CNN, he smiled. That evening, I arrived at Carlos's apartment building with Thomas and my tray of brownies. The warmth that greeted us as Carlos opened his door wasn't just from the heating, it radiated from the genuine welcome on his face. Rebecca, you made it. Carlos hugged me, then noticed Thomas. And you brought reinforcements. This is Thomas, stranded in Boston for Christmas. I hope it's okay, I invited him. Of course. The more the merrier. Come in, both of you. Carlos's apartment was nothing like my mother's perfectly curated holiday display. Mismatched decorations covered every surface, a haphazard tree drooped slightly to one side, and strings of multicolored lights crisscrossed the ceiling. It was chaotic, imperfect, and utterly charming. Around 20 people filled the space, some I knew from work, others complete strangers who immediately introduced themselves. No one asked why I wasn't with family or made me feel like I needed to explain my presence. Throughout the evening, I found myself relaxing into the warm atmosphere. We ate an eclectic potluck dinner that would have horrified my mother, everything from traditional ham to vegan curry to Carlos's grandmother's tamales. People shared holiday traditions from different cultures, exchanged silly gifts, and sang off-key carols with enthusiastic abandon. Thomas fit right in, charming everyone with stories and helping Carlos keep drinks refilled. Occasionally, he would catch my eye across the room with a smile that seemed to say, "This is nice, isn't it?" Around midnight, as the party began to wind down, I stepped onto Carlos's small balcony for a moment of quiet. The snow had stopped, leaving the city blanketed in white that glowed under streetlights. Thomas joined me, offering a mug of hot chocolate. "Your friends are amazing." "They really are," I agreed. Not what I expected for Christmas, but somehow exactly what I needed. "Can I say something?" Thomas asked hesitantly. "I've been thinking about what you told me this morning. About your family." I tensed slightly, but nodded. "What they did was wrong," he said firmly. "And based on what I've seen tonight, they're missing out on knowing a pretty incredible person." His words warmed something cold inside me. "Thank you for saying that. I mean it. And for what it's worth, I think you should tell people the truth. Not just me, but anyone who matters to you." I looked out at the snow-covered city. I've been so afraid of embarrassing them, but they didn't extend me the same courtesy. "Exactly," Thomas said. "And Rebecca? For someone who supposedly didn't fit her family's image, you're the most authentic person I've met in a long time." As we rejoined the party for one last round of games, I realized something important had shifted. The pain of rejection hadn't disappeared, but alongside it grew something stronger. The certainty that I deserved better and the determination to claim it. Christmas morning dawned bright and clear. I woke to a text from Thomas thanking me for including him in the potluck and asking if I'd like to join him for a walk through Boston Common later. I agreed, grateful for the unexpected friendship. Before meeting Thomas, I scrolled through social media and saw my family's perfectly posed Christmas morning photos. My mother's caption read, "Missing our Rebecca, who couldn't join us this year due to work commitments. The holidays aren't the same without all our children home." The blatant lie stopped me cold. Work commitments? The same mother who had explicitly told me not to come home was now publicly lamenting my absence, as if it had been my choice. I clicked through more photos, finding comments from family friends, "Send Rebecca our love," and "Working on Christmas? That's dedication." My own relatives had responded with sad emojis and "We miss you, Rebecca." The fabrication was so complete, so carefully constructed. No one outside our immediate family knew I'd been deliberately excluded. They had crafted a narrative that preserved their perfect image while making me appear cold and career-obsessed. When I met Thomas at the park, my anger must have shown on my face. "Bad morning," he asked as we walked along snow-dusted paths. I showed him my mother's Instagram post. "They're telling everyone I chose work over family." Thomas read the caption and shook his head. "That's gaslighting, pure and simple. The worst part is everyone believes it. Look at these comments." I scrolled through dozens of sympathetic responses. No one would ever suspect my perfect family of something so cruel. "What are you going to do?" Thomas asked. I put my phone away. "I don't know yet. Part of me wants to expose the whole thing publicly, but that seems petty." "Not petty. Self-protective," Thomas corrected. "They're damaging your reputation and relationships." As we walked, Thomas shared more details from his visit to my family's home the previous weekend. How my mother had shown him the guest room, where Rebecca stays when she visits, though I hadn't been allowed to stay there in months. How Michael had mentioned projects we were supposedly working on together, complete fabrications to maintain the illusion of a close sibling relationship. "The strangest part was your grandmother," Thomas said. "She kept asking your mom when you were arriving, and your mom would change the subject." This detail hit me hardest. My grandmother doesn't know I was uninvited? It didn't seem like it. "She mentioned having a special gift for you." My grandmother Ruth had always been my strongest ally in the family. At 86, her mind remained sharp, but she relied on my parents for transportation and often communication. If she was asking about me, she clearly hadn't been told the truth. Back at my apartment, I made a decision. I called my cousin Lisa, who had always been kind even while following Aunt Catherine's lead. "Rebecca, Merry Christmas," she answered cheerfully. "We miss you here." "Do you really?" I asked quietly. "Of course. Everyone keeps saying how sad it is you had to work." I took a deep breath. "Lisa, I need to tell you something. I'm not working today. Mom told me not to come home for Christmas this year." Silence filled the line. "What are you talking about?" I explained everything. The phone call, Michael's response, the complete rejection. Lisa's shock seemed genuine. "That can't be right," she insisted. "Aunt Catherine has been telling everyone how proud she is of your dedication to your career, that you couldn't get away." "She's lying, Lisa. I have the text messages to prove it." "But why would they do that?" "Apparently, I don't fit the image they want to project anymore." Another long silence followed. I don't even know what to say." I had no idea. No one does. That's why I'm telling you the truth. After we hung up, I felt simultaneously lighter and more determined. One person now knew the reality, and the sky hadn't fallen. I decided to continue, strategically reaching out to family members I trusted. I called my Uncle Robert, my father's brother, who had always treated me with respect. Then my cousin Daniel, who had once confided in me about his own struggles with family expectations. I contacted my mother's sister Jane, who lived in California and often missed family gatherings. Each conversation followed a similar pattern: initial disbelief, followed by dawning realization as I shared details only someone telling the truth would know. By evening, a small network of relatives knew the real story. Then came the unexpected call from my grandmother. "Rebecca." Her familiar voice brought instant tears to my eyes. "Grandma, Merry Christmas," I managed. "Daniel helped me call you. He told me what Catherine did." Her voice was steady, with controlled anger. "Is it true you were told not to come home?" "Yes, Grandma. Mom said it would be better if I wasn't there." "Because of how you look now? Your haircut and clothes? That's part of it. And because I don't always agree with their views." My grandmother's sigh carried decades of wisdom. "I raised Catherine to be better than this. Family is family, no matter what." Hearing her validation broke something open inside me. "I've missed you so much." "I've missed you too, sweetheart. And I'm very disappointed in your parents and Michael. This isn't what Christmas is about." After we talked, my grandmother asked Daniel to help her make more calls. By nightfall, the carefully constructed narrative my mother had created was unraveling as the truth spread through the extended family. My phone buzzed constantly with messages from relatives expressing shock and support. Aunt Jane called to say she'd confronted my mother directly and been fed a series of excuses and denials. Uncle Robert texted that he'd spoken with my father, who seemed ashamed but claimed he couldn't overrule Catherine on family matters. The most surprising message came from Vanessa's sister Madison. "I had no idea what they did to you. Vanessa told me you chose not to come, that you were too good for family Christmas now." I should have known better than to believe her. As Christmas Day ended, I sat in my living room looking at my small tree, processing everything. The truth was spreading, the lies exposed. My family's perfect image was cracking, revealing the conditional love beneath. Thomas texted late that night. "How are you holding up?" "Better than expected," I replied honestly. "It feels right to have the truth out there." "What's your next move?" he asked. I considered the question carefully. My initial impulse for public confrontation had evolved into something more measured. I didn't want revenge or drama. I wanted accountability and, if possible, healing. "They're having their annual post-Christmas gathering on the 30th, I wrote back. "All the extended family will be there." "Are you thinking what I think you're thinking?" Thomas responded. "I think it's time I showed up uninvited. Not to create a scene, but to stand in my truth." Bold move. Need backup. I smiled at his offer. This one I need to do alone. But thank you for everything. As I set down my phone, I felt something I hadn't expected, not just anger or vindication, but a profound sense of clarity. For years, I'd been contorting myself to fit into a space too small for my true self. No more. In 5 days, I would face my family not as the daughter desperate for approval, but as the woman I had become, strong, authentic, and unwilling to accept conditional love as a substitute for real acceptance. The 5 days between Christmas and my family's traditional post-holiday gathering passed in a strange limbo. I took time off work, using vacation days I'd originally planned to spend with family, and instead focused on preparing mentally for what lay ahead. Thomas and I met for coffee twice, his outsider perspective helping me maintain clarity about what I'd experienced. Jennifer came over with facial masks and wine, providing much-needed lightness. Carlos invited me to a small dinner where no one mentioned family or holidays, just treating me like a friend who mattered. Throughout those days, messages continued arriving from extended family members. My Uncle Robert called to say he and his wife would be attending the gathering on the 30th and wanted me to know they supported me. Cousin Daniel offered to pick me up from the train station. Even distant relatives I rarely spoke with reached out, the family grapevine working overtime. Noticeably silent were my parents and Michael. No calls, no texts, no acknowledgement of the spreading awareness of what they'd done. Their social media continued projecting perfect holiday joy, though I noticed the comments had shifted. Fewer responses, none mentioning my absence. On the morning of December 30th, I stood in front of my closet considering what to wear for my unexpected appearance. Not the conservative outfit my mother would prefer, nor something deliberately provocative. I chose a simple emerald green dress that made me feel confident, paired with the star earrings I'd bought myself for Christmas. The train ride to Connecticut gave me 3 hours to rehearse what I might say, though I knew no script could fully prepare me for the moment. I wasn't going to create a dramatic scene or publicly humiliate my family. I simply wanted to be present, to embody the truth they had tried to erase. When Daniel picked me up at the station, his hug was fiercely supportive. "Everyone's talking about it," he said as we drove. "Aunt Catherine has been calling people trying to control the narrative, but it's too late." "What's she saying now?" I asked. "That there was a misunderstanding, that you misinterpreted her suggestion to skip this year's Christmas." Daniel shook his head. "Nobody's buying it anymore." As we approached my childhood home, my heart pounded painfully against my ribs. The house looked exactly as it always did during the holidays, white lights outlining every window, wreaths on the doors, the glow of the tree visible through the front window. "You ready for this?" Daniel asked as he parked. I took a deep breath. As ready as I'll ever be. The front door was unlocked as always during family gatherings. We stepped into the foyer where coats were piled on the antique bench, the scent of my mother's holiday potpourri heavy in the air. Voices and laughter drifted from the living room. Daniel squeezed my hand before I rounded the corner into the crowded room. For a moment, no one noticed me standing in the doorway. I saw my mother in her element, gesturing animatedly as she spoke with my aunt. My father stood by the fireplace with a glass of eggnog. Michael and Vanessa sat on the love seat, his arm around her shoulders. Then my grandmother, seated in her usual armchair, spotted me. Her face lit up. "Rebecca." The room fell silent as every head turned toward me. My mother froze mid-sentence, color draining from her face. Michael straightened abruptly, spilling his drink. My father's expressions cycled rapidly through shock, guilt, and panic. "Hello, everyone," I said, my voice steadier than I felt. "Merry Christmas." For a terrible moment, no one moved or spoke. Then my grandmother rose shakily from her chair, arms outstretched. "Come give me a hug, sweetheart. I've missed you terribly." I crossed the room to embrace her, breathing in her familiar lavender scent. Other relatives began moving too. Aunt Jane approaching with a warm smile, cousins offering hesitant waves, Uncle Robert nodding encouragingly. My mother recovered first, her socialite training kicking in as she attempted to take control of the situation. "Rebecca, what a surprise." Her voice was brittle with forced cheer. "We thought you couldn't make it because of work." The room quieted again, the tension palpable as everyone waited for my response. This was the moment I'd imagined countless times over the past week. The confrontation, the chance to expose the lie publicly. Instead, I simply said, "No, Mom. You told me not to come home for Christmas. Those were your exact words." My mother's smile faltered. "I think you misunderstood." "I didn't misunderstand. Don't come for Christmas, or we'll be more comfortable without you here," I replied calmly. Those were very clear statements. Michael stood up, attempting damage control. "Sis, come on, it wasn't like that." "Really, Michael? You told me you'd pretend you don't know me for the holiday. Was that also unclear?" Murmurs rippled through the gathered relatives. My father stared fixedly at the floor. "This isn't the time or place for this discussion," my mother hissed, her smile completely gone now. "When would be a better time to discuss why you lied to our entire family about uninviting me from Christmas?" I asked. "Should we schedule it for Easter? Or would you prefer I skip that holiday too?" Aunt Jane stepped forward. "Catherine, we all know what happened. Rebecca has shown us the messages." My mother's face hardened. This is a private family matter that's been blown completely out of proportion. "It became everyone's business when you told them I chose work over family," I said. "When you painted me as cold and career-obsessed to protect your own image." My grandmother's voice cut through the tension. "Catherine, I raised you better than this. Family doesn't exclude family, especially at Christmas." Michael tried again. "Look, we just needed one normal holiday without drama." "The only drama was the one you created by lying about why I wasn't here," I interrupted. "And let's be honest about why I was really uninvited. It wasn't about work. It was because I don't fit your perfect family image anymore." Vanessa spoke up unexpectedly. "You have to admit, Rebecca, you've changed a lot since moving to Boston. The way you dress, your political views." "I've grown into myself," I corrected her. "That's not changing, that's evolving." My cousin Lisa, who had been quietly observing, suddenly addressed my mother. "Aunt Catherine, did you really tell Rebecca not to come because of how she looks?" My mother's composure cracked further. "It wasn't just that. It was her whole attitude, her lifestyle choices." "So it is true," Uncle Robert said, his disappointment evident. "You excluded your own daughter because she doesn't conform to your expectations." The careful narrative my family had constructed was collapsing in real time. Other relatives began speaking up, sharing their own experiences of feeling judged or found wanting by my mother's impossible standards. Michael, desperate to regain control, raised his voice. "Everyone stop. This is exactly why we wanted a peaceful Christmas without Rebecca stirring things up." "I didn't stir anything up," I said quietly. "I simply told the truth when people asked why I wasn't here." My father finally spoke, his voice strained. "Rebecca, we never meant to hurt you. We just thought it might be easier for everyone if you pretended I didn't exist." I finished for him. "How is that supposed to not hurt me, Dad?" The room fell silent again. My mother stood rigid, her social mask completely shattered. Michael looked frantically between his wife and our parents, unsure how to salvage the situation. My grandmother rose again, this time addressing the entire room. "I've sat through 68 family Christmases, and I've never been as disappointed as I am right now. Family accepts each other, flaws and all. Family doesn't exclude someone for being different. And family certainly doesn't lie about it afterward." She turned to me, taking my hand. "Rebecca, I'm proud of who you've become. Authentic, strong, and brave enough to stand in your truth. That's the greatest gift you could give yourself this Christmas." The gathered relatives began nodding and murmuring agreement. The tide had turned completely. My mother, sensing her loss of control, retreated toward the kitchen. My father hesitated, then followed her. Michael and Vanessa remained frozen on the love seat, their perfect family image in shambles. Aunt Jane approached and put her arm around my shoulders. "Would you like to stay, or would you prefer to leave?" I looked around at the faces of extended family members. Some supportive, others uncomfortable, all forever changed by what had transpired. I had accomplished what I came to do. The truth was out, the lies exposed. I think I've said what I needed to say, I replied. As I gathered my coat, various relatives approached to hug me, express support, or exchange contact information. My grandmother kissed my cheek and whispered, "Come visit me next week. Just me and you." Michael caught up with me at the door, his expression a mix of anger and confusion. "You've ruined everything. Are you happy now?" I looked at my brother, the golden child who had never had to fight for acceptance, and felt an unexpected wave of compassion. "I didn't ruin anything, Michael. I just stopped pretending. Maybe someday you'll understand the difference." Walking down the driveway with Daniel, I glanced back at the house with its perfect Christmas decorations. For years, I had believed that being excluded from that picture meant something was wrong with me. Now I understood that sometimes being excluded is the price of being authentic. As Daniel drove me back to the station, I felt lighter than I had in weeks. Not because I'd won some victory or exacted revenge, but because I'd finally stood firmly in my own truth, regardless of the consequences. The family image had collapsed, but something more genuine might eventually rise from its ruins. January arrived with fresh snow and the quiet that follows holiday chaos. The confrontation at my family's gathering had left aftershocks that continued rippling through relationships in unexpected ways. 3 days into the new year, my father called. Our conversation was awkward but necessary, him struggling to explain his passivity, me setting clear boundaries about what I would accept moving forward. "I should have stood up for you," he admitted, his voice heavy with regret. "I've always taken the path of least resistance with your mother." "That path came at my expense, Dad," I replied, not unkindly, but honestly. "I know, and I'm sorry, truly sorry." He paused. "I'm trying to understand who you've become, Rebecca. I want to do better." It wasn't full reconciliation, but it was a beginning. We agreed to meet for lunch the following month, just the two of us on neutral ground. My mother's response took longer and came in a more characteristic form. A carefully worded email that acknowledged miscommunication without accepting responsibility. She expressed hope that we could move past this unfortunate situation and restore family harmony. I read her message several times before crafting my response. "I'm open to rebuilding our relationship, Mom, but only if it's based on acceptance of who I actually am, not who you wish I was. I won't pretend anymore to make others comfortable." She didn't reply immediately. I hadn't expected her to. Michael's approach was different still. He sent a text that read simply, "This whole thing has been blown way out of proportion. Can we just forget it happened and move on?" I declined his offer of instant amnesia, suggesting instead that we take time to reflect on why things had escalated as they had. His response, "Whatever, it's your choice to hold a grudge," confirmed I'd made the right decision in maintaining distance. Vanessa, surprisingly, reached out with more self-awareness than her husband. Over coffee in early February, she admitted feeling complicit in the family dynamics. "I went along with it because I wanted their approval," she confessed. "I've spent 3 years trying to be the perfect daughter-in-law, and it's exhausting." "It's not sustainable," I agreed. "Trust me, I tried for 34 years. While some family bridges were being cautiously rebuilt or deliberately left in disrepair, other relationships flourished in unexpected ways. My grandmother Ruth and I began a Sunday afternoon phone ritual that became a highlight of each week. Aunt Jane visited Boston for a weekend, and we discovered shared interests beyond family connections. Cousins Daniel and Lisa stayed in regular contact, our bond strengthened by shared understanding of family dynamics. Thomas and I continued meeting for coffee, our friendship deepening beyond its unusual beginnings. He listened without judgment as I processed the family fallout, offering perspective without telling me what to do. When he eventually asked me to dinner, not as friends, I surprised myself by saying yes. Jennifer and Carlos integrated me more fully into their social circles, creating space for new traditions and connections. The potluck crew established monthly gatherings that became a dependable source of laughter and belonging. As winter melted into spring, I began the deeper work of healing. A therapist helped me untangle years of conditional love and approval-seeking behavior. Journaling became a daily practice, allowing me to process feelings as they arose rather than suppressing them to keep peace. I rediscovered passions I'd abandoned because they didn't fit my family's expectations: painting classes, volunteer work with a local theater group, weekend hiking trips. With each authentic choice, my confidence grew stronger, and the grip of family approval loosened further. By summer, my mother had begun making tentative efforts toward genuine connection. Our conversations remained somewhat stilted, but occasionally a moment of real understanding would break through the formality. She asked about my painting class once, actually listening to my response instead of steering the conversation toward more acceptable topics. My father and I established a monthly lunch tradition where, gradually, he began sharing more of himself: doubts about career choices, regrets about parenting decisions, hopes for his retirement years. These glimpses of vulnerability helped me see him as a flawed human rather than simply a disappointing father. Michael's journey took longer. In September, following a business setback that shook his confidence, he called late one night sounding uncharacteristically reflective. "I've been thinking about Christmas," he said. "About what you said regarding pretending." "What about it?" I asked cautiously. "I think I've been pretending my whole life. Pretending to be the person everyone expected." His voice cracked slightly. "I don't even know who I'd be if I stopped." It was the most honest conversation we'd had in years. Not a complete reconciliation, but a crack in the facade that might someday lead to something authentic. As the holiday season approached again, I found myself contemplating the previous year's pain with new perspective. The exclusion that had once devastated me now seemed like a painful but necessary catalyst for growth. Being banned from Christmas had forced me to confront patterns of conditional acceptance I might otherwise have endured indefinitely. In early December, my mother called about holiday plans. Her voice carried the tentative quality it had adopted since our confrontation. "We're having Christmas Eve dinner at the house," she said. "Everyone will be there. We'd like you to come if you want to." I considered her invitation carefully. "Will I be welcome as myself, Mom? Not the version of me you wish I was?" Her sigh carried decades of complicated emotions. "We're trying, Rebecca. I'm trying." "Then yes, I'll come. But I'll be bringing Thomas, if that's all right." "The friend of Michael's? You're still in touch with him?" "We're dating now, actually. Have been for most of the year." There was a pause before she responded. "Well, that's nice. Yes, bring him along." It wasn't enthusiastic acceptance, but it was acceptance nonetheless. Progress in small, imperfect steps. When Christmas Eve arrived, I stood on my parents' doorstep feeling echoes of last year's pain alongside new determination. Thomas squeezed my hand reassuringly as my father opened the door. "Rebecca, you look well." My father's smile reached his eyes. "And Thomas, good to see you again." Inside, the house was decorated with my mother's usual precision, but something felt different. My grandmother sat in her usual chair, beaming as I entered. Michael and Vanessa offered awkward but genuine greetings. Extended family members who had witnessed last year's confrontation nodded supportively. My mother approached, visibly making an effort. "I'm glad you came," she said, embracing me stiffly but sincerely. Dinner wasn't perfect. Old patterns emerged in subtle ways: my mother's reflexive comment about my hairstyle, Michael's competitive references to his career successes. But beneath the familiar dynamics ran a new current of awareness. We were all trying, in our imperfect ways, to create something more authentic than the perfect image we'd once projected. After dinner, my grandmother pulled me aside. "You changed everything, you know," she said quietly. "Standing in your truth, that day forced us all to look at our own pretenses." "I didn't do it to change anyone else," I admitted. "I just couldn't keep shrinking myself anymore." "That's exactly why it worked," she smiled. "True change never comes from trying to control others. It comes from being authentic yourself and letting the chips fall where they may." As I helped clear the table, I caught sight of my reflection in the dining room mirror. I looked different than the woman who had been banned from Christmas a year earlier. Not just physically, but in the confidence that now radiated from within. The journey from exclusion to self-acceptance had transformed me in ways no family approval ever could have. Later that evening, watching Thomas chat easily with my cousins, I realized the most profound lesson of the past year. True belonging isn't about being accepted by others, but about accepting yourself so completely that external approval loses its power over you. The family that had once rejected me was now making space for my authentic self, imperfectly, inconsistently, but genuinely trying. And while their effort mattered, what mattered more was that I no longer needed their approval to know my own worth. As I prepare to enter another year, I carry this truth with me. Sometimes the greatest gift is being excluded from spaces where you have to pretend to belong. The momentary pain of rejection can lead to the lasting joy of authentic living, if you're brave enough to stand in your truth and let the false images collapse. Have you ever had to choose between authenticity and acceptance? I'd love to hear your stories in the comments below. And if this resonated with you, please like, subscribe, and share with someone who might need to hear that it's okay to be exactly who they are, even when family dynamics make that difficult. Thank you for witnessing my journey, and may your own path lead to genuine belonging and self-acceptance.